Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 86th episode. Excited to be back once again, and we have a couple housekeeping things to talk about off the top. But before that, Niles, how have you been the last 2 weeks since we recorded our Invincible episode?
I've been good. I've been trying to prioritize mental health where I can. We were just talking about before we hopped on this call, but yeah, spent the weekend working on plants in my house, which is always a nice, relaxing time. So
Nice.
just remember to do that for yourself too. What about you, Dylan? How have you been since we last recorded?
Oh, yeah, pretty good. Also trying to prioritize mental health sometimes, but, we do the best we can. Had a big party weekend this last weekend, and I'm realizing that I cannot do that like I used to. I'm too old. Um,
Different
but
kind of health.
yes, yeah, my physical health took a toll. Yeah, couple things off the top. One, we had a video on the Star Wars prequel trilogy come out on Saturday, May the 4th. If you watched it, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you're new here, welcome. The next few minutes are not going to be very fun for you, but I think they're important. But yeah, thank you for all the support on that video. It's doing pretty well by our numbers standards, and it was really fun to make. And we'll do the sequels next year. Any thoughts about the video, Niles, before I move on?
It was fun to go back and rewatch all those movies. Because yeah, I think the last time I saw Phantom Menace was like over 10 years ago. It's been a long time, so it was
Yeah.
good to just revisit them and then provide our own commentary on it too. I feel like there is a lot of you know polarizing conversations out there about Star Wars. It's like, come on, guys, let's just have fun and just talk
Well,
about the movie.
I almost feel like it's like a rite of passage for film YouTube to make a Star Wars prequel video, and well, we've done it now. We've made one, so
We made
that
two.
was-
We've made two.
we've made two. But yeah, so on to serious real world stuff. Just because I don't know, our platform and our voice is very small, but I think it's if you have a platform, no matter how small, I think it's your responsibility to use it for
Yes.
good. And I wanted to talk about Palestine and
Yeah.
and more specifically this time student protests in America because if you didn't know, the state of Israel is carrying out a genocide in Gaza and the West Bank right now. As of the time of recording, they are launching another full-scale assault into the region of Rafah, where they have already forced over 1.5 million Palestinian civilians, most of whom are women and children, into this small, tiny area after the murder of over 35,000 of them already. As an American, we are responsible for this. Our tax dollars are directly funding this operation.
Yes.
And beyond our tax dollars, American universities have investments in weapons companies and other countries who have financial ties to Israel, which is why there is a massive student protest movement happening right now. They are trying to, and at our school, we had a similar protest about divesting from fossil fuels. I don't know if you remember this, but when we were
I do.
at the university, that they marched into the board meeting or whatever it was and demanded the divestment. Our university, of course, ignored us, as they are wont to do. But it is entirely valid for a student who pays to attend a university to have some say in how that money is used in the endowment. This is blood. This is blood money. Investments made in conjunction with Israel are blood money, and the protests themselves. They are the reason, the primary function of the First Amendment. That is why it exists, to protect what these students are doing right now. And it's important to recognize that, and it's important to recognize, too, that if you are someone who opposes their methods, opposes the occupation of private property, I need you to think about that for a second, because that means you would have opposed the civil rights movement. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. did. So if you're not comfortable with that, with the idea of opposing the civil rights movement, you need to look inward a little bit. and recognize what's happening. And if there are students in these protests who are in our audience right now, I'm guessing not. Our audience is very small. But if you are listening, keep doing what you're doing. You're incredible. You are braver than me. This is more brave than anything I've ever done or anything I probably ever will do. And you are mighty. And history will vindicate you. And in 10 years' time, the very people calling you an anti-Semite right now will be telling their kids that they were on your side from the go. Just know that. Stay strong. The people of Palestine have seen what you're doing for them, and they have expressed their thanks. You have given them hope in a time where they desperately need it. Stay strong, keep fighting, and be on the lookout for actual anti-Semites trying to co-opt your movement and remove them immediately. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
Niles, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I think you hit square on the head there, Dylan, because, this is literally, your First Amendment right it's in there, the freedom to assemble peacefully, and protest these ideas. And, you see people get on media outlets and complain about, they're blocking like these intersections, like they're doing these things that are inconveniencing my life. Let's throw them off the bridge. Like, let's get them out of here. It's like, they're not protesting the right way. And it's like, well, the whole point of protesting is to cause disruption and cause people to stop and think for a second and actually, cause an inefficiency. So that way the government says, okay, maybe we should do something about this.
Right,
That's not just dispersing the crowd. So that's like the whole point. And, I agree, Dylan, that Israel's doing some things I don't agree with, some really messed up stuff in Gaza. And it really makes me uncomfortable to think about that. And it makes me sad to think about everything that's happening over there too. But, I'm inspired by these students in America standing up for what's right and speaking about it and protesting. And yeah, I think you're correct, though, that they're going to be remembered on the right side of history when the dust settles.
Yes, you students out there right now, you are the best of us. This is the best America has to offer, and you are living up to what we say we are as a country. We are not that, but you are. So thank you for what you're doing. I think that's about all I have for that. But like, if you want to help, look into where financial resources can go to help either the protest or Palestinians directly. Pay attention to the BDS list as well. If you want to do a boycott, that list is online for BDS Israel. It will give you guidance and explain why. But use your voice. We have so little power, but the best power you have is your ability to speak to others with empathy and, just do the right thing. that's all I can ask.
Yeah. Why don't we move on to the thing we're here to talk about today?
Yes. We'll talk about movies now. This is a movie podcast after all, but we're talking about Challengers. And Challengers follows the decades-plus love triangle between former tennis prodigy turned coach Tashi Duncan, her husband Art Donaldson, and his former best friend Patrick Swayze, who is also Tashi's ex-boyfriend. Directed by Luca Guadagnino and written by Justin Kurtzes. The film stars Zendaya, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor. Niles, what are your initial thoughts on Challengers?
Well, I gotta say, it's a lot more fun to focus on than international wars and genocides, that's for sure. But,
yes.
It's important to talk about this stuff. But, Challengers as a movie, now that we're getting into it, I will say off the top, I'm not a big sports guy or even big sports movie guy. I will watch an occasional football game. I'll watch some soccer if it's on, but I'm not really actively following stuff or seeking out this kind of content. And from my perspective, going into this, not really knowing what to expect, I'm pretty positive on this movie. I think that, sports movies, there's some really good ones in the rough. There's some really solid ones like Remember the Titans, Happy Gilmore, like the list goes on. There's lots of good ones, honestly. yeah, I think that Challengers is within that list as well, and it got me in the mood to play some tennis too.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
I
think
did yesterday.
yeah, like I still need to. I'm like, it just looks fun when they're playing it on the screen like that. That just looks like a good time, and I think that in order for me to be interested in a sports movie, it's got to have a captivating pull, something like a reason why, like every other movie, obviously. But, I think especially with sports movies, for me particularly, just because, yeah, I'm not really into sports. And for this movie, it was obviously the characters here that pulled you in, and they're the main driving force here. It's not about like, are they going to win? Or are they going to lose? It's like, no, it's really about this trio of characters. And I felt that they were incredibly strong throughout the whole thing. And they felt like real people too. Like, I think that they did a really good job. These actors, gave great performances across the board here. Zendaya, Mike, Josh, fantastic jobs all the way around for all of them. And yeah, I really thought that there's a lot of really cool shots in this movie too, which I thought was just fascinating too. It wasn't just kind of the stuff that you expect to see in a movie. It was like, no, let's get creative. Let's put the focus on the tennis ball. Let's put it in a POV kind of spot for a second. But yeah.
Lots of really creative and I'd say expressive shots.
Yes.
Like there's the one at the beginning, at the very start of the movie, when the match is starting and then the camera sort of flies over the center of the court and just zeroes in on Tashi in the center of the frame. That was a great one. We also have those shots of Art and Patrick playing, but the camera is like underneath the court looking through it, but they keep the lines in shot too. So it's like you're looking from beneath a clear glass court, which was very neat. And then, like you mentioned, the tennis ball POV shot, which is just very fun.
Yeah, I was doing like quick Google searches. I was like, how did they film that? Because I'm just so curious about that technique.
Did you find out?
No,
no.
Everyone
Probably
else,
a digital effect. I'm sure.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I the only thing I found was another Reddit article of someone asking the exact same question, and no one had any answers. So if you guys know how they filmed that, I would love to hear it.
Oh yeah, it would be funny if they just strapped it wouldn't even work, but strapped a phone or something to a tennis ball and just hit the ball. But the shots are too the shots are too clean to do that. But yeah, I also thought this was great. This is a ton of fun. And like you, I'm not a huge sports guy. I don't follow it, but I did used to follow tennis quite a lot, and I've been playing tennis since I was 7 years old. So that is fun too. And I think Patrick H. Willems has a great video about baseball being the best movie sport, and he's right. It is the best movie sport. But I think tennis, at least if you understand the rules, is also a great movie sport. There's so much opportunity to zero in on a character's mentality because as someone who's played tennis, so much of tennis happens right here. It's it's here and then it's your feet. The actual swings and stuff like that are you have to execute them, but most of the work is done in your brain and with your feet. And so there's just so much opportunity to really lean into a character's mentality in a tennis scene because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, if you could just nail the backhand and the other swings, whatever they are, I forget the names, but different kinds of swings. If you could just nail that, you just got to calm your mind and focus on your mind, and then you're going to be great.
Well, you remember in Death Note, the tennis scene with Light and L, when Light is trying to figure out if L is going to think he's Kira based on how he plays the tennis match?
Not really.
Okay. Well, it's the classic Light and L in their own heads thinking about well, if I go aggressively and I win this point, he might think I'm Kira because Kira would want to win because Kira's all powerful. But if I don't win, he might think that I'm Kira because I'm trying to hide my intent or something like that. It's it's not exactly like that, but a lot of it is because you're making split-second decisions with everything you're doing on the court, and at a certain point it becomes natural, but you're thinking it's okay, if I take this one cross court deep enough, he'll hit it short, and then I can do a down the line approach shot and then volley this way, and it's there are these little calculations subconsciously running through your head. And it just, I can't remember. I can't believe I just thought of Death Note randomly. But I'm
Well,
just talking about the mentality of tennis.
It's a good one to bring in here.
Yeah.
Thinking three steps ahead.
Yeah, but the music, the soundtrack is so catchy, and I think it kind of steals the show in a couple of scenes. I've seen some really funny edits online too of like, fuck it, Challengers music, but put over the Twilight baseball scene. It's like, you know, the like pulsing song I'm talking about, and like plays in their big match. Yeah, I saw another one today. It was like, they're all using the words like the fuck it, Challenger score over this, and it was over Logan Roy getting a UTI in Succession. They're all losing their mind. It worked so well.
There's a fucking cat under my chair.
It's when like Logan's losing his mind, and Roman and Shiv and all of them are like trying to figure it out, and Kendall comes in and fucks everything up, and they're like, "Get the fuck out of here!" All with that song playing.
Yeah,
it's so perfect.
Get out of here! We got this under control. Yeah, the soundtrack is killer in this movie. Yeah, and it's Trent Reznor who composed it, also with Atticus Ross, Atticus Ross, and if you don't know who Trent Reznor is, he is the lead for Nine Inch Nails. He's been like the band for a long time, like the biggest name of that band, for its entire run, basically. And Atticus Ross, I also looked it up. He's also currently a member of Nine Inch Nails too. But I was such a big fan of Nine Inch Nails back in the day, so I could definitely hear the Trent Reznor coming through with this soundtrack, like the heavy kind of industrial tone to it.
Okay.
It does. That's Trent Reznor for sure. But yeah, he's great, and he's like, I looked him up too. He's doing a lot of cool compositions too. Like he's been working on he worked on like a Disney movie like a few years ago. It's like, wow,
oh my God,
the guy from Nine Inch Nails is working on Disney. That's cool. Who would have thought? But yeah, for me, I think it's definitely a recommend of a movie, even if you're not a sports guy. I think I just had a few complaints, which we'll get more into in spoilers, with the sound mixing and sometimes slow motion. But otherwise, yeah, I don't have a lot of notes that are like negatives on this movie.
Yeah, I really liked it, and I think like all good sports movies, there is more going on than just the sport. And it's about the characters, and it's about their relationships. And in this movie, their relationships are expressed in a variety of ways through tennis. And we'll talk more about that in spoilers. But yeah, I like, unless you're like an anti-sex scenes in movie person, which like grow up, you'll probably have a good time with this. And even this doesn't have like nudity or any. No, it actually does. There are a lot of dicks. I forgot about the dicks.
There's definitely some stuff in here. Yeah, that you can see.
But it's a surprisingly horny movie, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the trailer, I feel like it implies that Zendaya is gonna have a three-way with these guys. That's very heavily implied, but yeah, without getting too much into spoilers, doesn't happen. It's not that kind of movie. It does.
Other stuff happens.
It does. Other horny stuff, yes.
Yeah, it is. I would say it is almost as much about sex as it is about tennis. But it's But like, this is a great example of why the like no sex scenes in movies crowd is so mystifying, because it's like this movie does not work without the sex scenes. Like they are core to what it is, and you can't remove something like that. It's like, this is just that type of movie, and if that's not your thing, that's fine. I will make fun of you, but that's okay. But otherwise, I'd really recommend it. But like, my family all saw it too and really liked it. So yeah, I would say go check it out. But let's do some spoiler time.
Let's get into spoilers for challenges.
Yeah, I love the structure of this movie, and just how like. Because it's basically like we're centering around this match in the present day, right? At kind of a low-level tournament. And then it's that structure where there's like an event in the present, and then you cut back non-chronologically to events in the past that inform the relationships between the characters. And I just I love this structure so much. Whenever it pops up, not whenever, but most of the time when it pops up, I really, really like it. And just as we go on, we get more and more insight into the thoughts of all of our three leads in all these moments without them like ever exchanging any dialogue in this sequence. It's just them looking at each other, and like even the small detail of towards the beginning when Patrick and Art are like in the middle of a point and the whole audience is doing the classic tennis thing, and then Tashi's just looking straight ahead, contrasting that with at the end when she's looking side to side because the tennis is just like enrapturing her. I think it's just it's really cool. I like it a lot.
That's a cool observation because I was thinking about that too. I like movies that have these kind of multiple timelines going on, so then you can tell more of a cohesive story. It's not just A, B, C. It's like let's do B and then A and then C kind of deal. Kind of alternate. But that's a good point with like kind of alternating between it. It's just like a tennis match. Yeah, you're just going back and forth, back and forth. And I like that kind of structure too. Because I think it feels more realistic too. It's not like someone's just going to come on screen and be like, "Well, here's 5 minutes of dialogue to tell you why I'm angry at you," kind of deal.
Yeah. But yeah, you have a couple sort of the real life inspirations.
Yeah.
I do think because I read a little bit about this too, and before you get into it, I think a lot of the inspiration was more like inspired by the vibe of what he was watching. At least that was the impression I got. But yeah.
Yeah. And because I think when we got out of this movie, I was just like, I want to read more about this story of these tennis players. Like, how much of this was true? How much of this was an actual thing? Spoiler, none of it was true. This is an entirely fictional story.
Yes.
Which is great, and I'm glad that it's so fictional, because if it was true, then there would be like so many things that you need to like massage here, and I think it'd be a little uncomfortable getting that in depth with these kinds of affairs and stuff with tennis players' life. But all that being aside, there is plenty of real life inspiration for this movie. The writer, what was his name? Kurtzke? I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Kurtzke, I think.
Kurtzke, thank you. But he said in a few interviews, he gave some insights on the real life inspiration behind this movie. Tashi, she is definitely inspired by Roger Federer's wife, Mirka. I read an interview a little bit ago, and it's because Mirka, she became, I don't know all of this stuff, and so I might butcher some of these names too. So just let me know, Dylan, if I'm getting any of these wrong. But, she was Federer's manager after having her own career prematurely cut short by injuries.
I actually didn't know that, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but that's just kind of, I think, some of that.
She was not his coach, though, I don't think. I don't think Mirka was ever his coach.
Yeah, I think she was just his manager, so just kind of leading that way. I think he had other people coaching him. And all that, but then also there's a Wimbledon match from 2019 between Djokovic and Federer.
Novak Djokovic.
Djokovic and Federer. This Wimbledon match, 2019, it was definitely an inspiration for this movie too. It's I don't know if you watched it, Dylan, but it apparently
I did actually. I have, or at least I have memory of it. I at least watched part of it.
Yeah. It's like it's a very, very long tennis match. It's very cinematic between these two all-time greats. These very renowned names in the world of tennis. But it went, Djokovic, he ultimately won, but it was, I think, 7-6 for the first match, and then 1-6, 7-6, 4-6, then 13-12.
Yeah. For those who don't know, tiebreakers in tennis, the way it works is if you get to 6-6 in a set, you play a tiebreaker, which is the first to 7 points win by 2. And then you like alternate serve every, it's like, it doesn't matter for this. But that's not the case in the fifth set. In the fifth set, there is no tiebreaker. You win by 2 games. So that's why that match that went for like multiple days, that's why that happened. Because they kept trading games and no one won by 2.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much back and forth. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, he eventually won, but it was a very lengthy tiebreaker. They said it was like a 5 hour battle down to the wire. I don't know if that was like 5 hours for the whole day or if that was just like the final like match kind of thing. But
That would have been. It looks like it would have been that long based on that game count.
Yeah.
Like 5 or 6 hours.
And the thing too was that Mirka, she had to sit there the whole time and watch the thing, you know. So she's watching her husband play this match for God knows how long, hours and hours and hours, and she just stressed the whole time. Obviously, you know, she wasn't hooking up with both sides or had.
Right.
I don't know. Who's to say? I don't know all the ins and outs of all their personal lives, but you know, not as much stress, but still definitely stressed at that time. And then the writer of Challengers, he also said that there was, or the idea for this screenplay initially came from, I do know a little bit about this match. It was a match between Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams in the U.S. Open in 2018.
Yep.
It was kind of a controversial match. Like Osaka won, but it's infamous because Serena had this kind of dispute and this argument with the judges, and it didn't look great in her hand, which was unfortunate because she's such a great tennis player. But I think that was just kind of like, oh, she's kind of stepping over her like.
It was about like she got a point penalty for like allegedly communicating with her coach from the side of the court. Yes, and apparently it is against the rules, but it also like there's some gray area. Was she actually communicating with her coach? And also, it's a rule that most people didn't even know about at the time, and there was a culmination of like Serena had seen herself get called out for a lot of shit that other tennis players are not called out for, and you know, because Serena is black and tennis is a very heavily white sport a lot of the time, so there was a lot going on there. Yeah, but the I guess that inspired sort of the vibe of that too. It's sort of his impression of like the emotions of watching these kinds of moments happen.
Yeah, well, and I think
inspired
that
a lot of the tension, I think, in this script here, which works.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's probably some other matches that inspired him too. But I think your point on the communication there kind of resonated with me there, because I think a lot of this movie is about communication, whether that's verbal or nonverbal. And then you do have this kind of question of like, well, what is technically communication? Is it like verbally saying your coach giving you some feedback, or is it your coach just kind of like nodding at you and like kind of doing like a hand motion call? Is that communicating? What kind of communications are we talking about here? But but those are just some facts on where this movie came from.
Yeah, and I very highly doubt that any of the inspiration for like Tashi goes beyond Mirka being Roger's manager and watching really long matches all the time. Because just based on the vibe I get from them, I don't think there's any of this other shit going on behind the scenes. But I do remember like just watching the because this 2019 match was sort of after I watched tennis regularly, but like I watched pretty religiously like the entire Rafael Nadal Roger Federer rivalry to friendship thing happen, and it's like that's a great story in and of itself, just these two like titans of this sport battling it out for many years across the globe. It was really a cool like story in sporting to watch, I would say. But do you want to do your little nitpick things next?
Get up on my nitpicky soapbox here. I always got to find at least one or two things to complain about in each movie. Just minor things too, because I really do like this movie, and I think it's really solid through and through. I just think that there's two things that bugged me. Was the sound mixing in this movie at times. I think for the most part it's pretty good, and the sound effects are great, and it does sound like tennis most of the time, and they do a great job on those grunts. Good for them. But there's some scenes where the soundtrack, which slaps, it's so good.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
It just creeps back into the scene, and it's too loud, or it just overpowers what's going on. Like, and you can't hear what the characters are saying. Like, it's not super prevalent in this scene. I can't remember all the times I noticed it, but if you think in that sauna scene between Patrick and Art, they're chatting with each other, and it seems like several times in that scene it cuts away to something else and it comes back or something like that, or the music swells, and they're still having this conversation the whole time. And I just get so distracted by the music. And then there's points where I'm like, I literally don't know what he said because the music's too loud.
There were a couple points where I thought the dialogue got drowned out by the music. Like, overall, I liked how the music was used in those scenes. But I did also feel like only like 2 or 3 lines, though, that I couldn't quite hear. And I think for the most part, I got enough context out of it to understand what was going on. Like, I don't think... and. Let me know if you felt differently, but like I don't feel like I lost anything I needed to know in any of those moments. But yeah,
I agree. I mean, I don't feel like I lost a lot from it. It was just kind of like, guys, can we just? I just wanted to turn around and say to the sound guy, please dial it down just for a second. But it was...
Well, speaking of sound, actually, this is just not related to the movie, just related to the theater going experience. I have been having such bad luck with the people I sit next to in the movies recently. This couple to my right was just commentating the entire time. And I'm like, hey, let me know you're coming. I'll bring you a fucking microphone. You can just record your commentary track and post it online. Because what the hell? They wouldn't shut up. At the end, we'll talk about it later, but like in the final match, when he's getting ready to like put the ball in the racket and do the thing, it's like, hey, I fucked your wife. For the entire scene leading up to it, they're like, he's going to do the thing. He's going to do the thing. He's going to put the ball in the thing. It's like, yes, we're all here. We understand how movies work. We understand that the scene is building to him doing that. We don't need to hear you talk about it.
Come on, guys. I'm trying to watch a movie here.
It's just like, I don't know. I do feel like since COVID, and like since people started going back into the theaters, like there is a degree of theater etiquette that people just forgot. Like, you're not in your living room. Be respectful. Everybody paid to be there. Be quiet. We're not paying to hear you. We're paying to hear the film. Like, it's just like, it's not usually that bad. I've just had a run of bad luck with it recently, and I don't understand why this keeps happening to me.
We got to get some good karma points for you or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll do a witch spell for you or something at some point.
Thanks.
But speaking of the commentary on this during the slow motion part, I felt that throughout the movie there was also a lot of slow motion. So I think that final sequence, their match, no notes. I would not change how much slow mo there is right there because I think it works there because it gives us it kind of puts you into their headspace for a second, like their perspective, and you're like, oh, they're realizing this all really quickly. This is a big, profound revelation, and they're communicating here, like non-verbally. So I think it works really well there. I just think some other times there was just too much slow-mo, a little bit epic at times. I was like, am I watching 300 or am I watching Challengers here? Like,
that's why I liked it, actually. Because I think this movie at times is a little bit extra, and those slow-mo shots were very extra, and I liked it for that. I thought I appreciated it and thought it was fun. And it's like, because these people like take this shit incredibly seriously, right? And so in their minds, it's like, this is the most epic and important thing that's ever happened. And so the film is portraying it that way. And I liked it. I understand where you're coming from because there's a lot. I just think it worked. For me, it clicked with the vibe of the whole film.
Sure. I get that. That's good.
Yeah. Let's go into our three main characters for a little bit. We'll start off with Zendaya's Tashi Duncan, or Tashi Donaldson, as she's called later in the film, because she gets married.
Yes, that's true. Zendaya gives a great performance. She definitely comes off so calculated, intentional, and aggressive, and I love that. I think this is a very strong character through and through here. She knows what she wants. She goes after it, and she's like all about tennis. And I think that is just really powerful. What did you think about her?
Yeah. So I found this character very, very interesting, and she seems like, to me, she's always chasing the high of this like intimacy that she feels in that moment of perfect tennis against that girl at the beginning, and like she isn't really compelled by any romance, relationship, or sex that doesn't have tennis at the center of it. Like you even have that part where she's hooking up with Patrick when they're in college, or when she's in college, and he's like, "Wait, are we talking about tennis?" And she's like, "Aren't we always?" And he's like, "Can we not?" And then she immediately is done and over it. And I'm trying to think of there's a character that she reminded me a lot of, and I just can't place it. But like someone whose entire like intimate life is just motivated by something entirely different. Like it's not materialistic or anything like that. It's something else. It's just this like tennis has to be present for her to have any interest in what's going on, which I think
it's a fixation. Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's a focal point of her life. It's the locus. It's like everything revolves around tennis for her. But yeah, I get you. About
which
that
is why
too.
like partially why, despite saying otherwise, she keeps finding herself slipping back to Patrick, because like even though he's a bit of a fraud in a few ways, which we'll talk about when we get to him, but he does like really have that hunger to win at tennis still, that it seems that Art has kind of left behind. Like Art is content with where he is in life. Patrick is not. And Tashi finds that very compelling about him, and is sort of starting to lose interest in her husband because he's like complacent, I guess, or just ready to hang it up. But yeah, she's a really compelling lead character, and I think Zendaya does a lot of great work bringing her to life in this very full way. All three of the characters are great, but I think the film just doesn't work if Zendaya's performance didn't click, and it really did. So shout out to her. Any other thoughts about
Hell yeah.
Tashi's character?
Oh yeah, I think that she is kind of like when I was driving home after the movie, I was a little conflicted on her because I'm like, she's kind of like simultaneously like a bitch, but she's also like, you understand why. Like she's a go-getter, and she's got ambition and drive, and you know, if that's what it takes to get what you want, that's what it takes, and I can respect her character for that. One cool thing that I thought was that I have to mention about her character was the knee injury in the movie, which
physically hurt me to watch.
Yes, I think everyone in the theater gasped audibly when that happened, because it is you don't really expect it to happen that way. It just kind of happens, like you're like, holy shit, that's crazy. But that wasn't CGI. That was a practical effect.
They actually broke her leg.
She's at the Met Gala right now with a crutch. Like, wow.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually her knee, obviously. But they built. You can look up a photo of it online. It's kind of freaky to look at, but it is. They constructed a fully working mechanical mannequin replica of her lower torso for that effect. And it's freaky looking. I don't know if it can move and stuff. I don't know all the logistics of it, but it's weird to look at. But I was just blown away that they made that they actually created something for that, and that wasn't just CGI. It's like that. I don't know what would have been more cost effective there, but I'm so glad that they did a practical effect rather than CGI.
Yeah, it's like it's tangible in a way that gives you a very visceral reaction to it, and it is a deeply upsetting injury to witness, especially. And I was thinking about it yesterday when I was very lightly playing tennis. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Oh no, my interior ligament. No.
Yeah. But because I saw the trailer for this, right, and I was surprised how like relatively late in the movie that injury actually happens. For whatever reason, I thought it would be sort of a more inciting incident, but the way the film is structured and the story delivered, it's really not so much, which is interesting. But yeah, let's move on and talk about Patrick Swayze.
Swayze.
Yeah, the sort of initially, well, maybe the more talented player overall, but he was sort of the young prodigy between him and Art, And then by the time of the present day in the film story, he's more of the underdog. Art is kind of this staple of the tennis world, and Patrick he's a challenger. He's a challenger in these tournaments, and what he says about big Grand Slams like that is actually true. Like there are qualifying rounds that lower ranked people have to get through to even get into the main bracket of the tournament, which is it just seems so exhausting because like you do all that work and you get in and then you look at the bracket. It's like I'm playing against fucking Djokovic in the first round. Are you kidding me?
Well, I guess I'm not gonna win.
Yeah. One thing before I forget. Sorry. But towards the beginning, when Tashi and Art are driving around somewhere, you see the big billboard of them. It's like Game Changers or something like that. But the wind has knocked down Art's side, so it's just Tashi being shown, and it's like, oh, she's the real. Sort of the real magic behind this team is her, and Art is just kind of coasting off of the work that she does. Was kind of how I saw that.
That's a good read. I didn't notice that part, but that's a good point. Patrick, he's a fascinating one because I think he is aligned with Tashi in many ways. With his ambition and his drive and, his athleticism. And just like you said, he's kind of this prodigy person in a way. The only reason that him and Tashi start dating is because he beats Art in the, tennis, because he's better than Art at it, at least at that time. But he's not as type A about tennis as Tashi is. She's definitely, like we were just saying, everything she's talking about is about tennis. She's always focused on tennis. Patrick is like, well, tennis is fun, and I like doing this. But, you could tell he's kind of a little bit more relaxed by comparison in a certain degree.
Yeah, well, he even talks about, like, when Art says something to him, and he's like, I beat you. And he's like, well, I'm playing a totally different game or something like this. I think both Art and Patrick sort of... Tashi cares about tennis first and foremost. Patrick and Art care about Tashi, and they are using tennis as the means to get with her, basically. But I think also Patrick, he's a little bit like... He kind of plays himself off at least as a bit of a rebel, an outsider. He's kind of a dirtbag, and I just love how he paints himself as this like down on his luck plucky guy who's living in his car and can't afford the hotel room until he gets the payout from the tournament. And then later in the movie, Tashi's like, just call your fucking parents, man. You're so rich, and they will give you whatever you want, and you know it. This is all an act. I just think it's like, because I remember at the beginning thinking about like, oh, I wonder what happened that he like fell on hard times. But he's just curating this image of like a struggling artist, but for tennis. And I think it's a nice little texture to his character. It's like the self-imposed poverty that only a rich kid can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think he always like throughout the movie, I don't think that, because he didn't go to the college, right? That was just, so it's
he went pro immediately.
Yeah, because he was like, I don't want to waste my time, in college if I know that I'm already good at this sport. But I think, maybe it is a little bit of that rich kid mentality of like, well, I can't just rely on my parents. And like you're saying, it's kind of maybe a little bit of rebellion in him of like, no, I don't want to be supported my whole life. I want to make it my own way. But he is just going such a far distance to just try and keep this tennis career alive and curate that image, right? It's like
it's an ego thing. I think it's like
it is.
He wants to feel like he's intentionally doing everything the hard way, even though he has no real reason to, which I thought was fun.
Builds character, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see how different his career ended up compared to Tashi and Art, and it is, I think, because of that college. They both went to college, and they said, "I'm going to put in the time here rather than going pro," and actually work on building some skills and some other things there too.
Well, and it's not abnormal in tennis to just go pro right away. Like Maria Sharapova was a professional tennis player at like age 15 or 16. She was already in Grand Slam tournaments. And Patrick's point is right in a lot of cases. It's not to maybe the same degree that basketball or something like that, but it's like you do only have so much time at this level of play before you just can't compete anymore. And sometimes that is the decision. It's like, well, I should just go pro right now. Like I'm at the top of my game, and I can make the most of that while I have it. But Tashi and Art sort of took the long way and became institutions of the sport over time. Not through college necessarily, but just this like sort of a slow and steady wins the race type of deal, to the point where Art's career has like well and truly peaked by the time they re-encounter Patrick for this low-level tournament. But which I guess is a good time to transition to Art. But I loved Art's line when he's like just really trying to hurt Patrick in that sauna, where he's just like, because it's a low-level tournament, right? Like it's it's in the professional circuit, but it's not a Grand Slam or anything. And Art's just like, hey, I'm just passing through. This is where you live. It's so condescending.
Yeah. Oh, it's that is a great scene. I love the sauna scene. It's great.
Oh yeah.
Even if you can't hear all the words, but yeah, Art. His character. He's not as ambitious or aggressive as Patrick or Tashi. I think he's a little bit more thoughtful and introspective. You might play that off his shyness or something like that, but you do see that he's a good tennis player, though. He's been able to get this far. He's got a scholarship, so he knows what he's doing. But I think between these two characters, one of the scenes that really hits the nail on the head and shows you how different they are is that churro scene on campus, where they go and get the churros together and they're talking about the relationship with Tashi, how they're interacting with each other. Like Patrick kind of like takes multiple bites out of Art's churro, and it's just like, it kind of shows you like how Patrick is a little bit more outgoing, ambitious, and I think it's a little bit of foreshadowing there of like, oh, I'm going to eat a little bit of what you got going over there,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Patrick is more just showboaty in the way he's like that, because Art's a devious little fucker too. Like he's playing his own game. Like he's kind of manipulating the situation to his own end too. Like he's kind of trying to break them up because he's still into Tashi and wants that to work out. And he just kind of like bides his time, Yeah. He plants some seeds and lets them destroy their own relationship, and then kind of comes in afterward to sort of insert himself there, which I think is kind of interesting, which kind of parallels the tennis relationship too, right? Patrick goes for it, goes pro right away. Art kind of, goes slower, bides his time, and then is able to work himself up and not win Kevin not win the most tournaments necessarily. But remember, he says like, it's not about how many you win, it's about winning the right ones. Like he just plays a more where if like Patrick is kind of like trying to brute force his way to a championship, Art is more playing chess. A little bit.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. And I think it is partially because of that marriage too. Like once he's with Tashi, she's definitely more of a strategist, and she's thinking very critically about the tennis and the play and where he should be going and how he should get there. But yeah, it does sound stressful and crazy to be married to your tennis coach / manager all the time. You got to be around them all the time talking about your career. Like, that's got to be challenging.
Yeah, exhausting. Well, and there's that moment early on where you can see that dynamic already, because Tashi is watching the tennis channel, or whichever channel it is supposed to be, talking about Art's tennis and his performance and where he is, and he turns it off. Like he doesn't. He's very much like at a point where he wants to put the competitive tennis phase of his career behind him and focus on their like foundation and their kids and their relationship. But he also knows, or at least suspects, that the main thing Tashi loves about him is his tennis and his status as a high-level competitor, and he's very insecure and worried that if he is not that anymore, she will leave him. And she even tells him, like, if you lose tomorrow, I will leave you. And then
Yeah.
I guess regrets that, but also is not going to back down from what she says. So goes to Patrick. It's like, hey, can you throw the match tomorrow so I don't have to leave my husband?
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, you don't have to leave him, but whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think it does. Something that kind of occurred to me too in this movie was just the life of athletes. You know, whether you're a college athlete or you just go pro immediately, like it's can be a challenging for sure, especially if you're not just like instant, you know, stardom. Like you get let into the NFL draft and you're making millions and millions of dollars. It's like, no, you got to try. You got to really work hard to eventually get to the level where you want to be. And then, you know, if you lose it all, like if Art lost the match and then, you know, Tashi left him, it's just like, what the hell do you do with the rest of your life then? It's like you've done this sport for so long and this person for so long, and then they're just out of your life all of a sudden. It's like, well, that's a hole to fill, you know?
Yeah, well, and the other side of that the film is also speaking to is that you only have so much time if your career is professional sports, and tennis is not as extreme with this as like basketball or especially football, right? But you have to make your money in your 20s, basically, maybe your 30s, if you take really good care of your body. But like with Tashi, like one serious injury, you're done. It's over. And you have to figure out a different way to stay in that world if you're going to. But yeah, it does, like, because like Art is 31 and Patrick is the same, and both of them recognize it's like we have one more season pretty much before we really will not be able to compete at this level. And so like Art wants to retire on top. Patrick wants to reach that level before it's too late for him to do it. And it's just, yeah, it's a tragic and interesting part of the sports world. The nice thing about tennis, though, is you can play casually until you like are 90.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People do.
And at some point, you'll just switch over to pickleball, and you'll be
Yeah.
like, why was I playing this my entire life?
Or switch over to the clay courts. Clay courts is better on your knees, I think. Yeah.
I get that.
But I love the moment before his match, too, where he and Tashi are just sitting in the locker room in complete kind of awkward silence. Like, there's no pep talk. There's no coaching happening at this point. There's no relationship talk. They're just sitting there because I guess that's just the stage of their relationship where they are now. That's just their dynamic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And at that point, too, if you're the coach, it's like, well, what do I say to him at this point that's going to get him, you know, hyped up for the game? And I know this guy, and I've slept with him, and I've been giving him pep talks for years.
I just slept with him last night.
Yeah, what can I do to get him motivated to do a good job today? It's like, sometimes he can't say anything.
Yeah. Well, and because that scene is before his match with Patrick, right? Am I remembering that
That's
correctly?
that's before his first match of the movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was getting the timeline of that wrong. But yeah, it's like another thing about the structure, and less relevant to the point than I thought because it's a different point in the story. But this movie will be so fun to rewatch because there are going to be so many moments on rewatch where you notice something that is revealed later in the movie, and it just informs their relationships and dynamics so well. But yeah, Tashi's a little bit of an intimidating person in this film, isn't she? Kind of the...
She is. Yeah, she's definitely intimidating, and I think she's, the driving force for the bulk of this movie, and I think she gives a really great line at the start of the movie. Well, not really the start, probably the first 30 minutes. They're at the party with her. They're down by the beach, and they're just talking with her, and I can't remember the exact line, so I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but she says that like tennis is like a relationship, and that for a moment playing is like love, like you're in love, and I think you could read that line as kind of a good thesis statement for the movie, because the movie is just about relationships, love, tennis, And that's what kind of tennis is here. But, relationships, it's all about give and take. It's about serves, volleys. It's all about communication, both verbal and nonverbal. It's like how you understand each other and how you interpret reactions, expressions of one another, and how do you keep playing with that person? How do you keep that relationship going?
Yeah, I think I actually interpret it a little differently. I think it is because I think it's not about communication or even giving and taking, but it's like in a moment where like you're in the middle of a perfectly executed point, like you are sharing an experience with someone and completely in sync without any communication whatsoever, really, and you're just I kind of think I understand the feeling she was describing, where it's like in a moment, there are some moments where like the strategy of the game just kind of melts away, and if you're experienced enough, you have the instinct to just know what needs to be done. And if both players are doing that, you are sort of sharing something kind of profound and making something that is beautiful to witness. And I think that is the feeling she was describing.
I agree with that too, and I think I think both things can be true at the same time too, because I think the line it is referring to that flow during a match, like when you're in sync with the other person, and you know how they're going to respond. Like once you hit the ball over the net, you know where they're going to hit it next, or you're just preparing for that, and you can tell by their body language and just by your serve back to them. Right. What's going to happen next. You're kind of very much in sync, and you're communicating with each other without even realizing it to a certain degree, because it is kind of instinctual at a certain point. And I think that's what a lot of relationships kind of get into at a certain point. It is kind of an instinctual, hello, how are you doing? How was your day? Good to see you, kind of deal. It's just going to get into that rhythm to a certain degree.
Or you just like know each other's ticks and idiosyncrasies to a point where you don't have to really communicate like the little things with each other so much anymore. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and I think that line, it applies to romantic and platonic relationships throughout this movie. Patrick and Tashi, they're romantically entwined and then they're not, but it's kind of the same for Art and Tashi, and then also for Pat and Art. They have these kinds of peaks and valleys within their relationships, which is just kind of like a match of tennis to a certain degree. You might have a good few serves, and then you don't. you get creamed, and then you get right back on the horse, and you start doing well again. But I think that this line that she gave at the start, I think it comes full circle in that full sequence, or that final sequence at the end, because Pat and Art in this sequence, they understand each other so well. They grew up together, like they went to boarding school together, they were roommates, they know how each other plays tennis. Like they studied the film, and they've played against each other time and time again. So they know how to communicate each other without even saying a single thing, and that's exactly what they do here. They don't say a single sentence to each other until he's just like, fuck off,
Yeah. Oh my God, that scene is so funny too. Like, it's sad, but also it's executed so comedically. Like, it's established early on. He's like, I can't tell you if we fucked. And he's like, just do a different serving motion if you did. Like, put the ball in the little triangle thing, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called. And then he does, and then that's what he does later. And I just love, he just drops his hand. He's like, fuck off, and just lets the serve bounce by, and he gets a point penalty for it too, because you can't curse on the court. You can't curse on the court. You can't abuse your racket. Those are both point penalties. Just so everybody knows.
I'll keep that in mind the next time I'm playing competitive.
But no, you're right, and I think because it does it comes full circle, because Tashi does that like scream when she wins her match at the beginning, and they ask her, it's like, I've never heard anyone scream like that before, which is like, okay, I mean, people do that all the time, but whatever, not the point. And she's like, and then that's when she describes like that moment of perfect tennis where it like almost felt like love or whatever, and then she does that same scream at the end after the point between Art and Patrick at the very end there, because it's just like, and it also circles back to when she's going to watch their match at the beginning to determine which one of them she'll give her number to. They're like, who do you want to win? She's like, I just want to watch some good fucking tennis. And I think that ties back too, because it's like, one, they're playing tennis on like God mode at the end, and then two, they are experiencing what she described to them at the beginning, where they finally understand each other for real, like more than just the surface level layer of their friendship that fell apart. They now see each other for who they really are, and see Tashi for who she really is. And what will happen with that, who knows? But I kind of love that, and I love that the movie ends without a reveal of who wins the match. Because, like they talk about before, like they're really playing a whole different game. The movie is about tennis, but it's not about tennis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about tennis players. It's not about tennis. It's
Yes.
using tennis to tell these people's story.
It's about tennis players playing chess with tennis balls. That's what it's about. It is
Yes.
it is about strategy and manipulation, but they all kind of win in their own ways here at the end. You know, like if presumably he gets over his losing streak here, kind of proves himself to Tashi, so it feels like he's kind of regained some confidence there, or at least I'm assuming there at the end.
Who knows?
But at least him and Pat, you know, they've reconciled themselves, and Patrick kind of got his vengeance, his kind of thing carried her out, and now he's like, all right, no, I'm happy now, and I think Tashi wins as well, you know.
Yeah. I think it is more open-ended than that, though, too. Like, I could very much see the match ends and they fucking hate each other again, but they had this moment of of like understanding and love in the midst of this match, because it just like awakened that. But I like that it's open-ended. It could go either way. Who really knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great. And also, just want to say, like, you can't touch the net like that, so he did not win that point.
Who won that point? It's really unclear, but who gives a shit?
Yeah. But any final thoughts on Challengers?
No, sir. But yeah, I'd recommend it. It's a fun one.
Yeah. I'd recommend it as well. I think it was a ton of fun. It's very stylish, very
Yes.
It like pops, you know. It's really well paced, well executed, and it's just fun to watch. Like, it's a very entertaining and enjoyable film.
Yeah,
But yeah,
would
with
agree.
that, let's go into some other stuff that we've been watching. What have you been up to recently?
You know, it's going to be kind of more of the same from the last episode, but you
Mm-hmm.
know, I've restarted The Sopranos a few weeks ago, and so I'm getting really into season 5 now. Man, these characters, they're fucking me up. They're fucking me up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to finish it. I'm almost there. It's just got like 20 episodes left to get
Okay.
through.
Nice.
Also continuing on with Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, still loving that show. We just watched actually Paraguay. He went to Paraguay like season 3 or 4 or something like that, and
Yeah.
that was just such a fascinating episode. I just didn't. It made me realize just how ignorant I was of Paraguayan history and culture. So definitely schooled me a little bit. And continuing on with Schitt's Creek, it's definitely a fun, wholesome, warm show. And we also, I don't remember if I mentioned it last time, but we started the Fallout show
Yay.
as well. It's really cool. We're only 2 episodes in, but it's a very neat premise. And I didn't really play the games growing up, but now I kind of wish that I did. But
Well, you can always go back to them. They're like all on Game Pass if you ever get Microsoft
Exactly.
Game Pass.
yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and play at least one of them.
All right.
But what about you?
I have been continuing to read the Cryptonomicon. I have finally gotten to the treasure hunting part that I was promised at the start. It seems like that's finally kicking off at page 510. So that'll be fun. And then I can't remember what week it was, but I finished Shogun, or Shogun finished.
Nice.
And I watched the end of it. And that was an incredible series. It's so good. I'd recommend it to like everyone. And, you know, continuing on with Helldivers 2 when I have some time. There was some controversy with that game over the last week. They announced that you would now have to link your Steam account to a PlayStation Network account to continue playing.
What?
Sony made the developer do that. They were not happy about it, and then everybody was like, "Well, there are like 170 plus countries that PlayStation Network is not offered in. What happens to us?" And then Sony delisted the game from all those countries, and so
Wow.
people got really, really mad. Which a lot of times I discount gamer rage because gamers will complain about anything. But in the case of like a game getting removed from countries, that's actually pretty justified, especially if you've put money into it.
Yeah.
So like there was a whole review bombing campaign, and the Arrowhead devs went to Sony, and this decision as of this morning got undone. So yay, a victory
Good.
for the gamers out there.
Yay.
Yeah, but that game, it's a great game, and I'm glad that it will not be marred by this dumb business decision going forward. And also, I've been playing Manor Lords. It came out on Friday in the early access, and it's like a very free-form city builder set in like medieval France. It's like a supply chain management city builder with real-time combat strategy game. It's really cool. It was developed by one guy. He's been working on it for like 7 years.
Wow.
And it's now in early access, and it's kind of addictive. I like it a lot.
Manor Lords. Okay, I need
Yeah.
to check that out.
Yeah. Well, you got to get a PC first. That's only on PC.
It's a barrier to entry.
Yep. Definitely a barrier to entry. But yeah, that's all I got. And that's probably good. Excuse me. That'll do it for us this week on the show. We have an exciting month of May coming up, though. I think we're doing Planet of the Apes next, and then Furiosa. After
I think so. Something like that. Yeah.
It'll be a good time for sure. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. If you like what we do here, please like and subscribe. If you haven't checked out our rewind on the Star Wars prequel trilogy that came out this weekend, I will have that linked in the description. Please go give it a watch.
Yeah.
There are time codes for each of the episodes in the description of that video if you want to jump to any one of them. But yeah, like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a 5-star review. And Niles, where can people find you on the internet until next time?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you on the interwebs?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at DDayMovies, on YouTube at DDayMovies, and on Twitch at DDay_movies. You can find both of us here at Play, Pause, Rewind on your podcast platform of choice or YouTube, and on TikTok at Play, Pause, Rewind _podcast. And the podcast is on Twitter and Instagram as well. And you can also find us on our second channel, Play, Pause, Rewind Videos. That is where all of our non-podcast specific stuff lives. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I appreciate you all bearing with me at the start of the show. This was a lot of fun. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.